Hey everybody, it's Chuck Esposito here with Jason McCormick at Red Rocks Racing Sportsbook, and it's that time of year again. Yay, sportsbooks. Let the madness begin. The college basketball tournament is ready to get started, and it is just going to be a phenomenal tournament this year. I mean, we know that Duke's the overall favorite, but there is a case to be made for a lot of teams. But before we start talking about the games and the teams, what else is going on?
Well, you got to get yourself ready for the tournament. Part of getting ready is getting in last man standing. Last man standing is our contest that we run here at Station Casinos, kind of a spin-off from our college football, pro football last man standing. College basketball is absolutely one of the most exciting ones. $25 to get in. Buy 4, get a 5th entry free. All you have to do is pick a winner against the point spread on Thursday, and then that will advance you to Friday. You win on Friday, you advance to Saturday, and etc. It's
same format as the tournament, right?
It's one and done. You pick a winner, you get to advance, guaranteeing $50,000. So if you're going to be playing college basketball, last man standing is the tournament. You got to get in. You got to get in by 9 o'clock on Thursday, that 21st. So now's a great time. Get yourself signed up at any of the station sports books. Get yourself signed up for last man standing. And as again, tournament craziness, but what do you think that you're looking for on Thursday morning?
I'm going to go ahead of Thursday. I'm going to go to Wednesday.
Okay.
The play-in game Wednesday night, it's Arizona State, and you look at Arizona State and St. John's. And who are those two coaches? Bobby Hurley and Chris Mullen. You think about the history of those two guys in the college basketball tournament and the careers that they had. If you listen to everything the committee said, St. John's was the last team in. I think that's a really competitive game on Wednesday. So don't wait for Thursday and Friday. You've got playing games both Tuesday and Wednesday, but that one really highlights it to me on Wednesday. And when I jump to Thursday, the very first game of the day is Minnesota and Louisville. And the head coach of Minnesota happens to be Richard Pitino going up against Louisville. And we all know who the legendary head coach of Louisville had been before he was removed as head coach there. So that's kind of an intriguing matchup for me. But then I think the 6-11 matchup between defending champ Villanova and St. Mary's. Nova was just 5-7 on the road this year. St. Mary's knocks off West #1 seed Gonzaga to win the Western Conference. So I think you look at that, and it's a pretty interesting matchup. Those are kind of the three games that jump out to me on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, or Wednesday and Thursday, and then you look at Friday.
Well, that Thursday morning game, you talk about Louisville, Minnesota, that game will have huge handle. That's the 9:15 in the morning game on Thursday. That's kind of that kickoff of the tournament when everybody's here. So that game will be a very important game for people to get their day started or kind of be chasing.
A little incentive for Richard Pitino too.
I'm looking. I go to Friday. I go to the exact same time frame, 9:15 Friday morning, Iowa, Cincinnati. Cincinnati, Mick Cronin, they just won the American Athletic, beat a very, very good Houston team that got a #3 seed. I think Cincinnati is very, very dangerous. Iowa, on the other hand, they're 2-6 in their last 8 games. They really, really struggled down the stretch. I think Cincinnati could be a dangerous team. I think that conference, coming out of that conference, those teams could do some damage. And then my late game, I think it's the last game on Friday night, so it could be your bailout game on Friday. Virginia Tech and St. Louis. The A-10 has had some of the Cinderellas come out of that conference. When you talk about Davidson, VCU, George Mason, Rhode Island, that conference has definitely worn the Cinderella slipper year after year after year. St. Louis won their conference tournament, but they're not wearing the slipper this year. They finished.
They got lucky to beat St. Bonnie's in that game.
They finished. VCU lost earlier in the tournament. They were the #1 team coming out of that conference. They finished 6th in the A-10. They had a bad road record. I think they were 4-8 on the road this year. Obviously, these games being in neutral sites, but they're going to get up against Virginia Tech, who finished 5th in the ACC, which I think again is the most dominant conference in the country. Virginia Tech's a big favorite in this game, but I think that Virginia Tech could put a hurting on St. Louis here Friday night.
Yeah. Before we break down the regions too, you think about it. I mean, the Big Ten I think had 8 teams in. The ACC had 7. The SEC had 7. So you think about the power conferences and how they're dominating dominating the tournament, but you look at the parity. I know we've talked about it before that a lot of these smaller schools that have kids that have been there 3 and 4 years can compete with the big boys. They're not intimidated because of the one and done. We look how dominant Zion Williamson is, but he's probably going to be gone. This is going to be his only tournament. There's only 3 games on Thursday and Friday where there's a favorite of 20 or more points. You didn't see that. A decade ago, you used to see at least half those games that were double digits in the 20s, even some in the 30s. You just don't see that anymore. Now we're going to look at some of the regions and kind of break those down and give you some insight of some sleepers as well.
If you need to get yourself ready on the dogs, turn on Hoosiers on Tuesday afternoon, watch Hoosiers and see what the boys from Hickory can do, and then go out and bet your underdogs for the tournament games.
All right, gang, now we're going to take a look at the tournament as a whole, and we're going to break down the regions. I mean, you've got 3 ACC teams as #1 seeds, which is kind of unprecedented. There's a real chance you get an ACC final. But I think when you look at the West, now I'm going to look at the West first, and that's where the other team, it's Gonzaga, as a #1 seed. I think that's the weakest of the regions. I think you look at Gonzaga, who is the 4th #1 seed. Michigan, who the way they have it bracketed, I thought Michigan State could have easily been a #1 seed there. Michigan is kind of the number 4, #2 seed. So I think that's the weakest region for me. I think there's some value with Texas Tech and Florida State. One of the teams that's got a lot of play in the future book was Florida. Tremendous value there. But for me, again, I think that's the weakest region. But I think we both looked at it, and I think the toughest region, or one of the toughest regions, is the Midwest, where North Carolina is the favorite.
Yeah, before you jump out of the Midwest, going back to the West, I do like Florida State. I think that they're a potential sleeper out of that division, or that region. Buffalo and Nevada also in that region. The Wolfpack made a great run last year, essentially the same team coming back. Didn't win the Mountain West, but Caroline was out for that game, one of their top players. So I look for them to potentially make a run, a tough game against Florida to open that game. But yeah, talking about the Midwest, I mean, I think this is the toughest regional. Talking about North Carolina and Kentucky being on the 1 and 2 line there.
I think Houston can win it all.
Houston at 31 and 3. There, you have Iowa State, a big team out of the Big 12. Auburn played great here down the stretch, and then you've got the sleepers in Wofford and Utah State, and a Pac-12 team out of Washington. So that bracket is absolutely loaded. Again, I think Carolina is the class of the bracket, but when you have to play game after game after game against those type of tough teams, I think anything can happen in that Midwest region. What about the South?
I think before you jump to the South, I think getting back to what we mentioned earlier about a lot of these smaller schools who've got kids that have been there 3 and 4 years, they're just not catching people by surprise right now. We talk about Wofford and Utah State and Buffalo being sleepers. Based on where they're bracketed, I'm not so sure those schools are sleepers. I think they're legitimate teams that are going to win a couple of games and definitely are going to get some backing from the bettors. I think when you look at the South, for me, I think there's a lot of parity in that conference, or in that region. I think you look at Virginia, who last year, overall #1 seed, what happened in their first game? They lost. They're not going to lose, I don't think, this year in the first game, but you look at Tennessee, you look at Purdue, and I think Purdue's one of those teams. It's not a sleeper team. They haven't done well historically in the tournament, but I think Purdue's really good. You've got Kansas State's good. You've got the national champion, defending national champion in Villanova in that conference. And then you have Cincinnati, who upset Houston. And you look at Cincy, I think they're a real dangerous team as well. I think there's a tremendous amount of parity in the South. And for me, I think that's one of the tougher regions.
Yeah, again, I like Tennessee. I've liked Tennessee all year long. They kind of stumbled going into their conference tournament. And we've already talked about Cincinnati. I think that they've got an opportunity. So the South should be very interesting. And then we look to the East, where you have the Blue Devils, the #1 overall seed in their tournament. Obviously, the #1 overall seed in the East. The #2 seed there, Michigan State. LSU, obviously, with some coaching issues. Virginia Tech, Louisville, Mississippi State. I would like to tell you to look for a sleeper in that region, but have you seen Zion Williamson play? I just don't see anybody beating Duke coming out of that region. They're a class above everybody else. To knock them off the perch, not only in this region, but from a tournament overall standpoint, Duke's going to have to kind of beat themselves, because they're one very impressive team as we go head into the tournament.
I think when everyone looks at your brackets, don't pick all #1s, but don't pick no #1s. I think you can make a case that, you look at this year, I think there's a real chance that 2 of the 3 ACC teams play in the Final Four. I like Michigan. Kentucky, Duke, and Virginia. I don't know if you've got an opinion on who you think will be there as the Final Four go, but I think it's interesting, and I think you can make a case for probably 17 or 18 schools this year after Duke. We know how dominant they are, and as you mentioned, I don't see a sleeper out east anyway either, but Duke's awfully tough if Williamson is healthy, but I think you can make a case for a lot of schools.
I have right now, I have North Carolina and Duke in my final. I haven't done the West and the South from picking a winner there. I think, again, as you said, those are a little bit more wide open, but again, that's what makes this time of year so much fun, is looking at those brackets, seeing where you can see those upsets, and you know they're going to happen. You know that we'll be sitting here come Elite 8 time talking about who's wearing the Cinderella slipper. There will be some upsets. That's what makes this time of year so great. So having some fun handicapping the games, have some fun filling out your brackets, get signed up for Last Man Standing, get yourself the STN mobile app. Again, don't have to be waiting in lines as you're coming to these games. Get the app sometime early this week. That way you can sit at home on your couch or come enjoy our incredible sports books and watch the game with 300 of your closest friends that are cheering for every basket. Not only the games, but we're going to have props on all these games. We'll have a team to score the first 10 points, team to score the first 20 points, total number of 3-pointers. Will a 1 seed win the tournament? Will a 2 seed win the tournament? So look for a lot of props to be up on the board before the tournament starts, and most importantly, have some fun watching the games and enjoy the college basketball.
Yeah, as Jason said, it's so much fun, just the atmosphere. If you haven't come out and experienced it yet, even if you have the mobile app, it does save you from waiting in line, but you get to be part of the atmosphere and the crowd and the hype and the noise. It really is contagious from the Racing Sportsbook throughout the casino because of the start times of the games. It's so much fun if you haven't experienced it yet. So many guys come out, they make vacations out of it, they enjoy everything we have to offer, not just the Racing Sportsbooks, but of course it's the weather, it's the rooms, it's the entertainment aspect, but nothing better than being in a Racing Sportsbook on this Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday with the crowds, the atmosphere, and the hype.
And the bars. Our bars have a ton of beverage specials
They do.
that you'll be able to jump into.
A bracket beverage special. So come out and check that out. One last thing I'll leave you with. If you guys are catching this before Tuesday night, we've got our big tip-off to the tourney seminar at Sunset Station. Myself and Brian Blessing host. We've got a great panel. ESPN's Hammer and Hank Goldberg, Bernie Fratto from Sports Fox Radio. You've got Andy Isco from the Gaming Today and Bruce Marshall from the Gold Sheet. It's a great panel. It's free. It's open to the public. 6 o'clock Tuesday night in Club Madrid. We'll be serving pizza and soft drinks. They gave out a lot of winners last year, so come on out, check it out, have some fun. Let the madness begin. Come on out, say hi to Jay and I, and have some fun. But this is the time of year that we both love. Thanks, guys.